Yo guys, what is up? Max for Diablo 4 video, and today we're going over my Plagueshifter build for Season 2. Now, this was my most played and favorite build in Season 1. Season 1 was where they added the subterranean aspect, which allowed our Poison Creeper to cast landslides for us, and I've done a lot of work to update this build for Season 2. That's why it's taken me a few days, and I'm really happy where this build turned out. This is the most comfortable of the Nightmare 100 builds that I've made in terms of just you can play pretty lazily. We can eat Nightmare 100 Storm Strikes. Nightmare 100 modifiers, they will not one-shot you on this build. Obviously, if you don't have your Fortify up, they can still one-shot you, but we're clearing Nightmare 100s easily. We just face tank everything. We do a ton of damage. We're not doing as much damage as Lightning Storm or Tornado, but we're still doing a ton of damage and being able to do all content. And so that's why I'm really excited to share this build with you guys. Hope you enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So we're going to start with a little bit of an overview and kind of what's changed to the build, because a lot of things have changed this season that have improved this build. This build was great last season. It's probably even better this season, and I want to explain why. So to start us off, last season, this build, you used the Barber Heart. The Barber Heart was great for single target, but it ruined a lot of our lucky hit chance. This build really relies on Pack Leader, which allows our lucky hits with our critical strikes have a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of our companion skills. Our companion skills are doing a lot of damage for us because Poison Creeper is going to be double casting our landslides for us. Now, with the changes and basically not having the Barber Heart, we are going to be getting Poison Creepers back all the time. You basically have 100% uptime on Poison Creeper, which is one of the best AoE skills, and now casting Landslide for us, which has got massive AoE coverage and makes this build feel really awesome for mobbing. The next thing that's amazing about playing this build this season is last season it had great survivability, but I told people to get life on kill on your helmet and stuff like that because we didn't have all these things healing us. Now with the vampiric powers, we're going to be using Undying. Every time that we basic skill, all the casts that we're going to be doing constantly heal us. So this build no longer has any issues with healing. Before, you did need to get some life on kill stuff to feel comfortable getting a lot of health back. Now Undying is amazing for us. The next thing that's really fantastic is this build is using the Ravenous aspect. Ravenous gives us a lucky hit chance to increase our attack speed. This build scales very well off of attack speed because we're using Nature's Fury. So the faster that you attack, the faster you're going to get all of your abilities back. And Ravenous gives us a massive boost to our attack speed, further reducing our need to use a Crone Staff. You could still use a Crone Staff with this build. When I was originally making this build, the 50 to 75, we're using a Crone. I'm not using a Crone in our Nightmare 100 version. I just don't think it's needed. And Ravenous is going to fill that attack speed gap so we can get even more damage without having to take up 2 aspect slots plus having to use a Crone Staff. Another amazing quality life for this build is the combination of the Accursed Touch, which gives us a chance to inflict Vampiric Curse and also prey on the weak. With our high lucky hit chance that we're going for this build, enemies are always going to be vulnerable, and we're able to no longer use the Exploit glyph. So I'm not running Exploit. Enemies are vulnerable all the time, and that allows us to fit even more damage into this build. And one of the big changes to the Paragon Board, because the Paragon Board I'm using is pretty much the same, is we're able to fit in the Outmatch glyph. This glyph reads that we deal 16% increased physical damage to non-elites and bosses, so a big damage increase to our bosses, but it also boosts up the power of rare nodes. Currently, this is only level 15, but the rare nodes that I've got this boosting is our Impel, which gives us a massive damage increase and more willpower, and Resolve, which gives us a massive increase to our resistances. I'm getting over 15% all res just with this node, which allows us to easily cap out all of our resistances without really having to do much work at all. And so we've got res cap, we're almost at armor cap, we've got a ton of life, and we're very comfortable doing the hardest content in the game. And the 2 other big changes for this build are we no longer have to put Landslide on our hotbar. Before, in order to get advantage of Terror modes, you had to have Landslide slotted on your hotbar somewhere. Now we no longer need to do that, which frees up another skill slot, which gives us even more damage, even more survivability, so we can take a Landslide off of our hotbar. In addition to that, they buffed Nature's Fury, so now anytime that all of our Landslides that we're going to be casting cast a free Storm skill, those storm skills count as earth skills, meaning they scale with all of our earth skill damage. So all of the like lightnings and tornadoes coming out of our landslides are no longer tickling enemies. They're actually doing pretty decent damage. They're not going to be like killing elites, but they're doing a decent amount of damage, which gives us even more AoE damage coverage on this build. Now that we've gone over kind of an overview / basics of the build, let's get into gear specifics. Now to start us off, the best in slot helmet is the Godslayer crown of like normal uniques. It gives us a pull in, which is perfect for all of the AoE damage that we do. We can group up those enemies. We get an increased damage. It's got max life. It's got cooldown. It's got damage, crowd control duration. This is perfect for this build. Another option, if you have it, is the Harlequin crest. Obviously, this is an uber unique, but a lot of Druid builds can't actually benefit from this. For example, Tornado, you can't use this on. Lightning Storm, you can't use this on. This build takes amazing advantage of a Harlequin crest, giving us even more damage reduction and +4 ranks to all of our skills, which just juices the damage up of this. With this, I've got landslides hitting for like over 2 mil. But Godslayers, if you have it, is probably best in slot. If you don't have either of these uniques, use something that's got like basic skill, attack speed, cooldown, max health, and armor will do you really well. Then for our chest piece, you're looking for a lot of damage reduction and armor here. I've got triple DR plus an armor roll plus our max roll disobedience. This is going to give us a ton of survivability. We don't really benefit from things like the Insatiable Fury or Mad Wolf's Glee, so then we can like freely slot on just full damage reduction here. Next up, on your gloves, you're really looking for attack speed and lucky hit chance. Those are the two most important things. I've got crit damage with earth skills, which is great. Crit chance is also really nice. And then ranks of our landslide, obviously. And then on my gloves, I've got the subterranean aspect. This allows us, this is the most important aspect for the whole build. Poison Creeper, cast Landslide, and all of our earth skills are going to deal more damage to poisoned enemies. For our pants, I'm using the Tibalt's Will. Note, these are actually not required at all for this build. Of all the builds that I posted, Tibalt's Will are not needed at all, mainly because this build doesn't expend any spirit. We are auto-casting via Trample and Poison Creeper all of our landslides. You're not actually ever casting landslides, so this build doesn't have any spirit issues because we're not using any skills that cost spirit. However, Tibalt's Will, whenever we are unstoppable, we get increased damage and for 4 seconds after, and we're always going to be getting unstoppable when we're constantly trampling around. So this is just more damage. If you want more survivability, you can put on like a quad damage reduction pants, and those will make you basically unkillable on Nightmare 100. But I went for the damage, so that's why I'm using Tibalt's Will. Next up for your boots, I've actually got really bad boots on. Movement speed and movement speed after killing an elite are probably the two most important roles here. And then I would go for double res. I only have 1 res, which like isn't really that important. And I've also got spirit cost reduction, which once again isn't important because we're not using spirit. So like ideally you're using movement speed after killing an elite, and then double resistances would be like the perfect boots. You could also get damage reduction while injured, but you're probably not going to get that injured. And then I am using the ballistic aspect for another +2 ranks of our earth skills, trying to scale that damage up as high as possible. If you want a little bit more move speed, you could use Ghostwalker for more attack speed and more movement speed, which would be nice, but I went for the raw damage with the ballistic aspect. Then for our weapon, I'm using a one-hander with a totem. You absolutely could get away with a two-hander. The reason I went one-hander is because one-handers are inherently going to have faster attack speed, and attacking more often and faster is going to give us more survivability. So for like a two-hander, if you're not trying to do like Nightmare 100 content, you could just do a two-hander and you'd get even more damage with this build. I went for a little bit more quality of life. So I've got 2 aspects, a one-hander, and we've got a little bit more base attack speed. On my axe, I've got willpower, core skill damage, damage to close, and damage to crowd-controlled enemies. These are all perfect because damage to crowd control is going to improve the damage of our Earth and Devastation, which is really nice. And then I've got more core and close, which are all going to be active all the time. And then I'm using the natural balance every time I cast a storm skill, which is all the time because we're going to be using Storm Strike to generate our like natural balance. Then we're going to be getting that earth skill crit, and then our earth skills will increase the crit chance of our storm skills. Don't really care about that too much, but we can proc more lucky hits off of our crits, so that's very nice there. Then for your amulet, I've got a terrible amulet on. Werewolf skill damage isn't really doing anything for me, but the cooldown reduction is nice, and the big thing here is Ranks of Envenom, and then we're using the Nature's Fury. Key passive triggers a free skill. This is what is giving us all of these cooldowns. Every time that we trigger Nature's Fury, we're getting cooldown for our Trample, we're getting cooldown for our Hurricane, we're getting cooldown for our Bulwark, and those are all really nice, and that's why I put this on my amulet, so we have the max uptime of all of our abilities, which helps with survivability. Then on your rings, you're really looking for like lucky hit chance and damage to crowd controlled. Those are the two most important things. And then anything on top of that that you can get. Crit damage, earth crit, vulnerable damage, damage to close would all be really nice. But damage to crowd and lucky hit is kind of like the main things. This is damage to close, crowd controlled, crit, and crit chance. And then I'm using my landslides hit twice. This is really important. It'll basically more than double your damage. And then we're using a retaliation because we're fortified all the time to give us increased damage the more fortified that we have. And lastly, on my totem, I basically got a horrible totem. I don't really need the spirit cost reduction. I don't need the crowd control duration, but I've got some crit chance and cooldown on here. And then Trample becomes a Nature, Magic, and Earth skill. This is important because then all of our Nature's Fury procs can feed into giving us Trample cooldown, and also Trample will cast more landslides, and all of those landslides going everywhere give us more procs of our Nature's Fury, which gives us more cooldown of all of our other abilities. Plus, we're always going to be able to maintain Unstoppable with this, which will always keep up our Tibalt's Will damage increase. For our Spirit Boons, we're using Wariness, 10% reduced damage from elites, Swooping Attacks for more attack speed, and Avian Wrath for 30% more crit damage. We don't really need crit chance on this build as much as like other builds, mainly because we're getting Terramotes, and Terramotes are going to give us guaranteed crits, so that's why we don't need the crit chance. Pack Leader, super important. Crit chance, have a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of your companion skills. Most important Spirit Boon for this whole build. And then lastly, Calm Before the Storm. All of our Nature Magic hits have a chance to give us more cooldown on Petrify, which gives us a massive crit damage increase. For our Vampiric Powers, I'm using Undying. This gives us a bunch of healing on the build. Metamorphosis gives us another way to proc our Vampiric Curse, another source of Unstoppable, feeds into Tibalt's. That's really great. Prey on the Weak, even more damage for all of our vulnerable damage. Ravenous, that attack speed, and a Curse Touch, the chance to make enemies Vampiric Curse, which is so great for us. For our skill tree, I'm using Storm Strike plus Wild Storm Strike. This gives us a chance to chain to additional targets. More enemies hit, the more chance that we've got for our Nature's Fury. I'm not using Fierce Storm Strike because we've got enemies vulnerable all of the time already via our high lucky hit with our Vampiric Curse. So we don't need this at all, actually, which is very nice. Then we're going Wild Impulses, more damage with our core skills. The Spirit cost doesn't impact us at all. Then we've got Landslide with Terramotes, or Primal Landslide, to give us those increased crit damage and crit chance. Bulwark, originally this build was using Innate Earth and Bulwark with the barrier bonuses, and I tried putting up my barrier bonuses. I didn't have like perfect barrier gear, but I got my barrier bonuses to about like 55%, I want to say, and I was seeing Bulwark hit for like 30k. So this is a little bit of extra damage, but I just didn't find it super worth. And so we're getting Preserving Earth and Bulwark so that we can fortify way more. The more fortify that we have, the more damage we get to do. Then I've got Vigilance for more damage reduction for 6 seconds after using a defensive skill, and Ancestral Fortitude, cap out all of our resistances. Then we've got Poison Creeper with Ferocious Poison Creeper. Remember that we don't really need crit chance as much on this build, so I went for the longer duration so that we've got more uptime on Envenom and more uptime on our Subterranean aspect. We don't need Spirit, so Trample is going to give us another massive source of Fortify. We've got Hurricane. Now, Hurricane's kind of like a new thing that's added. It just gives us another 20% less damage dealt from all of the close enemies. If you wanted, you could go a little bit more attack speed with Blood Howl. I found I didn't need it. That more survivability is just really nice. You can just face tank everything. Crushing Earth, Stone Guard, 1 point in Safeguard is more than enough. Honestly, we've got so much Fortify from how often we're trampling and bulwarking every few seconds. Then we've got in our skills, Defiance for more damage with our Earth skills. Earth skills do more damage to vulnerable, and Resonance. Every time that we cast our Storm Strike, we're going to get triple damage on our landslides, which is really, really nice. And then Quick Shift, we're quick shifting a lot of the time, so this is just another damage multiplier for us. And then lastly, Nature's Fury, really, really important. This is kind of what ties the whole build together. For our Paragon board, the glyphs that I'm using are territorial, increased damage to close, and more damage reduction from close. We've got Spirit for increased crit damage, and then whenever we're critting, we're stacking up a damage multiplier on enemies. We've also get Tectonic. This is a massive improvement to the build. It's got base lucky hit chance, and all of our Earth skills deal more crit damage. Absolutely perfect glyph. Feels like it was made for this build. We've got Earth and Sky. This gives our nature magic skills 10% increased damage to crowd control or vulnerable enemies. We've also got Outmatch for that 16% increased damage to non-elites and bosses. Plus, we've got this in our first board for that massive damage increase and resistance increase. And then we've also got Undaunted for even more damage while we're fortified and damage reduction while we're fortified. I think this is probably the best Paragon board I've set up, so we're going to walk you through it. And once again, you can see the written guide on DPS check for like following the Paragon board on a website where you can like mouse around yourself, so you can like take your time setting up this board. But to start, we've got Outmatch in our first thing, then we're getting our Impel and our Resolve. Perfect there. Then we've got our Earth and Devastation node with our Oppressed for that more damage to crowd-controlled enemies, which feeds perfectly into our Earth and Devastation. I do need to get some more crowd-controlled damage. For example, I don't have it on my ring, so not perfect on Earth and Devastation quite yet. Then in our first board, we've got Undaunted for the more damage while we're fortified. We're going up here to grab 200% more armor, or plus 200 armor. Here we've got Earth and Sky. This is a perfect spot for Earth and Sky because it gives us that bonus to our magic nodes, which is all damage to poisoned and damage reduction from poisoned enemies. So I love putting any sort of like increased magic nodes here. Perfect there. Then we're not going to go through here because we can skip all this stuff in the middle. We're going up into the Survival Instincts board. Note that we're not going to be grabbing Survival Instincts, even though it's got that werebear damage. We're just not in werebear form enough, but we are going to get that damage while healthy. And then we're moving up here to grab Spirit so that we get the increased crit damage. And I do grab the Battle-Worn Hide for the more armor while in werebear form, plus the more willpower, which is nice. Then we're moving up here for more damage reduction while fortified. Then we're moving into the Thunderstruck board. In the Thunderstruck board, we've got the Tectonic for more crit damage with our Earth skills and more lucky hit chance. And then we're pathing up here for the more crit damage and damage to crowd controlled enemies, which once again feeds into our Earth and Devastation board. Then we're going over here. We're grabbing Poison Resilience and Heightened Malice. Whenever we have all these poisoned enemies nearby, we're going to deal a massive damage increase to them. Doesn't really help for bossing, but it really does help for mobbing. Then we're working our way from the Survival Instincts board up into Inner Beast. In Inner Beast, we're grabbing all of these max life and armor nodes, more armor, and then we've also got the Territorial glyph here for more damage to close enemies, and then working our way up to Nimble for more attack speed and more damage. Attack speed, really nice on this build, and that is our Paragon board. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. This is going to be the last of our like main Druid builds that I like planned on covering, so I do have a Druid tier list coming out soon. Expect that, and then I'll also be making some new builds once the new rings come out, but I'm also working on Sork, and I plan on starting a Barb here very soon. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.